So about a month ago, I posted a rendering on Instagram of an office space that I was experimenting with and modeling and rendering, and I really liked the results. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to take this space that I'd made and experiment further with some of the new and advanced tools that are available for Archviz professionals. In short, I wanted to generate some animations of it, and I wanted to use real-time to do it. If you don't know, real-time animation is where it's at. It's so much more fun and so much more intuitive, and it's awesome to have real-time feedback on things like depth of field and camera placement and all those kind of things. Now, my first thought was Unreal Engine 5. As you probably know from watching this channel, I've done a bunch of experimenting with Unreal Engine 5 recently and made a full professional project in that software with animation, and I've just kind of been trying to see whether it makes sense for my daily workflow. You can see the many videos I've made regarding this subject here on my channel, and I'll put relevant links to some of those videos in the description. In the case of my experimental office model, I was able to bring it into Unreal Engine 5 using Datasmith, and it completely worked. I was navigating the space in real time, and it looked pretty good. However, the translation is not a perfect one. So it would take some time of me adjusting and possibly re-importing again, making adjustments in Max for it to look exactly how I wanted it to. And that would take additional time, and I didn't want to spend that time. I wanted to as quickly as possible, take my rendering and turn it into an animation that looks very similar to the rendering. This is where Vantage comes in. I have experimented with Vantage in the past, as you may know. Again, I'll post links to that video. After making my previous Vantage video, I immediately declared that I would be working Vantage into my daily workflow, and I totally did. Vantage is absolutely perfect for this kind of stuff, especially if you're already familiar with Vray. The translation from 3ds Max Vray to Vantage animation is seamless, it's painless, and it's accurate. This is the perfect kind of tool that can be easily integrated into my workflow. And it was an obvious choice for making an animation of this scene. So let's look at the process I used to get from Vray rendering to high quality Vray animation. How long did it take? How complicated was the process? How real time was it? We will discuss all of that. And I think you will see from what I demonstrate that you too can quickly take your still shot rendering to a pretty nice animation quite simply, quite easily. And I'll show you how I did that, and you will see how easy it is for you to do that as well. At the end, we'll take a closer look at the finished product, and I'll talk about what I like, what I didn't like, and what I would do differently next time. We'll also discuss throughout Vantage what its weaknesses are, what its strengths are, and what I think it's really, really good at. Hopefully it will be useful to your workflow moving forward, just as it has been to mine. The first step to getting my animation was, of course, to have a nice 3ds Max scene that I liked, that I actually wanted to animate. So I built out this little office space. It's really very simple, and it just has a bunch of Cosmos objects and other objects filling out the scene with detail. Now, this is obviously a very important part of this process, knowing how to work in 3ds Max and Vray. If you need to learn any of that stuff, how to create an interior scene, an exterior scene, everything you need to know about 3ds Max and Vray, check the links below for my existing courses. They are super cheap. And then, of course, you have to install Vantage. So I have my Vantage toolbar over here. You have to decide whether you want a live link where everything is done in Max and then just reflected in Vantage versus actually just exporting as a VR scene and doing all your work in Vantage. And that's what I chose to do here. So you just click this, it creates the VR scene and opens it in Vantage. And then everything you do from there will be done in Vantage. You'll have full control over your scene. And it's such a quick and easy transition. Okay, quick is a bit of a relative term here, but it's pretty fast. Okay, eventually it all comes in, and you can see that the translation actually looks really good. The only thing that's messed up is kind of the overall exposure and the aspect ratio. That's one of the things. I should mention that this is not a mistake. This is just because I was controlling the exposure using the frame buffer, and I was using the aspect ratio controls in the render settings, and those two things just don't come across. But that's all controlled in the camera, and we can just adjust right over here. So of course, exposure value, turn that up. And the resolution preset is at 720. I mean, that's a super lame resolution. So we just turn off this and make it a square instead. And then we go to the camera that we're adjusting here and we update it. Now it'll give you this option, press OK only to save the camera resolution. Press save to discard all existing VR scene camera data. So now we're breaking away from what the VR scene was, and that's okay in this case. Okay, what I love about this is that in the light settings over here, and I've got another tutorial that shows every setting in here. That's not what this is about. I'm just talking about the story of how I took this from still to animation easily. One tool that I used that is very important is this, essentially the light mixer over here. And you guys know I love the light mixer more than any other Vray tool. But you can do it compact, basic, or advanced. Okay, so it gives you more settings as you go from basic to advanced. All right. But really what I want is the compact. That's all I need. One thing to keep in mind is that as far as I can tell, this is universal for the whole scene. So the camera settings can be individual, like exposure and depth of field and stuff, and those can be updated. But here, if you do this and you update it, watch, I'll show you. So say we want this light, whatever this light is. Okay, that one, the under desk light. 200. Okay, it's going to be 200 in every scene now. When I go here, we're at 200 for that one too. Even if I update this, press OK, and say, let's say we'll put this at 5 for this scene and update it. But then when I go back to here, it's at 5 for this scene too. Okay, so that's a universal change I'm doing, and I haven't found a way to animate that yet. I really want Vantage to be able to animate that. That would be a really slick thing to be able to turn lights on and off. And you saw in my finished rendering that I had both a night version of this and a day version of this, and I wanted to animate it in Vantage, but I wasn't able to, so I needed to find a workaround, and I'll talk about how I did that too. But fingers crossed that in the future you can fully animate your light intensity inside of Vantage. That would be sweet. As it stands, the way you would do this is you would animate the lights in 3ds Max, then when you export as a VR scene, that animation should come in because animation information is saved inside of a VR scene. Okay, so you can do a lot of the work in 3ds Max before importing it into here, and that's how you would solve that problem. But like I told you, animating in real time, way better than animating in 3ds Max on your own. So I want to be able to do it in here. And I'm sure you understand the difference. I don't want to set the intensity, render a little preview and say, that doesn't look quite right, and then set it again, render again. That's just not an intuitive way to animate. But in real time, you could just use a slider and be like, slide. That looks about right there. Set keyframe. Boom. Right? You can see how that'd be way better. But as it stands, we're mostly just animating cameras in here. So now let's just look at how we animate the cameras and how it works. You'll see it's super easy. Let's just take this one camera view right here and get the exposure and the aspect ratio correct. Turn this off. Go square. Lock it again. Okay, this exposure's got to be up. Okay, let's take that view and then let's make another view right here. Create a new camera. Make sure your depth of field is all set up how you want it, right? The easiest way to do that is just by using this. We can focus up here. We can focus down here. All right, you got to update it. And then to animate, you just open the animation panel down here. And you say, okay, I want to go from this camera. Okay, I kept hitting OK when it asked me about the VR scene thing. I need to actually hit save all, so it saves the exposure in here too. And let's see, I want to turn on depth of field, and I want to make sure my depth of field is in the right place. So like right there, and then save those updates. My other camera here, just make sure that the depth of field is going to here and it's turned on. All good. So that is camera 12 and Vray camera 10. Okay, so all I do is open the animation panel down here, Click Insert Camera. We use Vray Camera 10 is our first one. Then we add a second one, Camera 12. It automatically puts this transition in between, which you can see is a ramp. What do you call that? It's ease in, ease out. I like to put them as linear, so you can right click on it and say linear, and you can change the duration of it by right clicking and saying, let's take 5 seconds to do this. I mean, those are basic animation functions, but I mean, we're done now. We have this little shot here. Okay, the quality doesn't look great because it's trying to figure it out as it goes, but when you render it, you can get much higher quality. Okay, so I was pretty happy with doing it just like this, and then all I did from there is add another one. You know, you can add another camera, say Vray Camera 9, and I just cut out these transitions here so that it would just cut directly to the next camera. But on the moves, you want to transition in between, right? So I don't even know what those cameras are, but let's see. It'll just do this shot and then immediately cut to another one and do some crazy animation that I hate, but point is, that's how you do it. If I added some time here, let's see, set duration to say 8, see what it does there. So it's just doing this weird animation. Obviously, I wouldn't want those two cameras together, but you can see what it does, okay? And that's how I did it. That's how I did the whole thing. So you can, in real time, go in here and direct your little movie by just doing little cuts of different cameras. And that's all I did. I added about 5 of them together and rendered it, okay? And you can see what I mean about how intuitive this is. You can see it all happening in real time. Oh, one thing that we didn't do is change the resolution here. Set this to 1280. At 1280, so it matches our cameras. That's our real shot right there, okay. So just as in demonstration, that's how you do a quick camera cut right there. Okay, and you can add as many as you want. So what I did to cheat the lighting animation or the lack thereof was set it up as a day scene, render it as an animation, and then just change all the lighting to make it a night scene. Okay, so what I did was I turned down the sun intensity to 0.2, or even, I mean, you can put it at 0, do whatever you want. This is real time after all. Okay, and then just adjust the lighting so that everything looks more like nighttime. Okay, and then I rendered it again. So I had 2 animations, actually. I had a daytime animation and a nighttime animation. And then I used some After Effects tricks to blend them together. Not really tricks, just basic editing. But I'll show you that too, coming up. That's how you do the basic animation. I mean, you can see it was super easy, super intuitive to just go in here and animate your scene. You can look around however you want and find the camera shot you want. You can even use the video game controls, WASD type controls, to look around. So I'm just using the mouse and video game controls to find the camera that you want. So you're like, oh, that looks cool. Boom, new camera. And then I want to move it to look at the TV or the computer screen. Boom, new camera again. Now animate that. So easy. And you can play with the depth of field really easily too. I mean, it's very nice way to animate. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, a couple other things you can do. You can do free look if you want, where I'm just in my scene. And you can see the rendering is pretty good. And I'm just navigating like a video game control, right? Let's see if the arrows work too. They do something different. They're more like the mouse. Okay. So WASD is walking around, and the mouse is where I'm looking. We can escape out of here. We can also turn on collisions, and then when we walk around, I've done this with scenes where there's stairs, and you can actually like walk up the stairs and stuff. See, I'm hitting the wall right now. And you can see, okay, so this actually looks better than Unreal Engine 5. Okay, it's not as quick and smooth, but it looks better. I should clarify that what I mean is it looks better without any further adjustment, and also I mean that the GI is accurate actually. And it's kind of like fast enough, right? The GI and everything isn't perfect in this kind of real-time situation, but it's close. It's a little bit blurry and like it looks like the denoiser is just going nuts here. but that's okay because the lighting is overall good and you can navigate around and you can see exactly, I mean, you get a very good idea of what your finished camera is going to look like, right? So although the denoiser is going nuts and like making everything look really smooth and blotchy, the lighting is still accurate, right? More so than Unreal Engine would be because it's using more faking to make it go faster. Okay, now obviously Unreal can do the path tracer and make it look very realistic, and it'll be, you know, similar to what we're seeing in here. But it all has to be taken into account. For intuitive animation and quickly taking my rendering to something that looks accurate lighting wise and material wise and everything and translates perfectly, Vantage is where it's at for me. Okay, when we're ready to animate, it's very simple to do. Let's just quickly show that. This is how I did it. Go in here, set your resolution, 1280, because we're making a square Instagram rendering in this example. Now, you can turn the denoiser off. The denoiser is what's making it all look smooth, okay? And that's because it's taking a really noisy scene. If you take it off, you take off the denoiser, like it doesn't look all blotchy and smoothed out, but it does look noisy. I prefer the noisy look rather than the denoised look. So you can turn that off in the render settings, and I didn't. I did a couple examples where I did have it off. The only issue is that, like, if you want it to not be super noisy, you need to turn up your samples, right? So you can see my samples are set to 200. I think by default it's 100. But you can turn this up to get higher quality. It just means it's going to take more time to render each frame. So these were the settings I used. 200. I did use the denoiser on. Kind of would like to do denoiser off and maybe turn this up a little bit more if you want to get really high quality stuff. But other than that, it's just, you know, these settings are mostly self-explanatory. You tell it where to save and how to save. You can save it as an image sequence and an MP4. So it actually makes the video and saves all the images. I took this into After Effects, which I'm going to show you, and so the image sequence was great. After Effects works well with image sequences. Okay, but you can just start. Now, how long does this take? That's a good question. It certainly isn't rendering in like true real time, okay? And the samples is going to have a big say in how long it's going to take. You can see this little animation I'm doing here, it says it's going to take 57 minutes. Okay, part of that's because my sampling set up high. You can see though the quality is pretty dang high. I'd like to, let's abort this and let's turn the denoiser off and see how it looks. Okay, so in the end, my animations were actually taking like 5 hours. Okay, that might sound like a ton for a real-time animation. And really, we shouldn't call it real-time animation, we should call it a GPU animation, right? The real time is the feedback on what our animation is going to look like, but when we actually go to render at high quality, we're just maximizing the GPU capabilities to render it faster. And 5 hours is much faster than a CPU rendering, right? This could take like 5-6 minutes to render each frame using CPU rendering inside of Vray. And you multiply that times however many frames this would be. Maybe this is like a minute long. So how many frames is that? 1800? Something like that? Yeah, probably. So 1800 times 6 minutes is a lot of time. More than 5 hours. Okay, so the point is, for me, is that real-time animation, I mean, the real-time stuff is happening inside Vantage, where I'm seeing instantly, like, the depth of field feedback and the camera position feedback. And then I can send it to render using GPU rendering. And that is a very powerful tool. Okay, and it's also way faster than the traditional way to do it. That's also why I really want Vantage to have the ability to animate lights within Vantage, because that's another thing I want intuitive feedback on in order to animate well, personally. Because in Archviz, that's the kind of thing we animate, right? We don't usually animate objects very much, but lights and cameras, for sure we do. Okay, so that's the animation. That's the breakdown of the process I went through, how it all looks, what it's like. So, talked about the things I love about Vantage, the things that I wish it could do better, and also just where to use Vantage in your workflow and how to use it. Again, I think it's an awesome tool that's really essential for doing this kind of stuff. Let's look at what I did quickly in After Effects to get the finished result. Check out the finished result some more, and yeah, we'll finish this project up. Okay, so I just want to show really quickly what I did in After Effects, because this video is getting pretty long, and this is supposed to be showing how to quickly take your renderings from still shot to animation. So let's not spend too much time here, but as a quick note, like I said, I took it into After Effects and composited everything. Here's my final cuts. So this is the daytime scene, and I also did a nighttime scene. Okay, so I had 2 renderings. I processed them both basically exactly the same way, and then I just clipped them together or laid them on top of each other and faded between one and the other to make the final video. But in After Effects, I was basically just processing the JPEG sequences or the PNG sequences. Okay, so if we just look what I did here, I turned each one into, here's the overall cut. And you can see I took each of my cameras and turned it into a pre-composed composition. So turned it into its own project, basically, each video. And then I'm just kind of doing little fades between them. Inside each one of these, I just have the JPEG sequence. Then I have an adjustment layer, which does that. So you can see, well, let's get it off of that frame because that first one's blurred. Okay. So you can see that's the adjustment layer, and then the second adjustment layer is a subtle vignette, and that's it. And I applied that to all of the pre-compositions so that they all look the same. And let's just look a little harder at this adjustment layer here. If I just look at the effects on this adjustment layer, we have, let's look at them all. So it looks like I had a levels that was actually turned off, a little too bright, a curves that added kind of a more green tint to it by just taking the green channel and lifting it up a little bit on the left side. But that's also turned off. Okay. Then I used an add grain. If you look in here, you can see this. And, you know, if I had left the denoiser off when rendering, I probably wouldn't need to add this noise back in. It might look a little too noisy. I don't know, but I really don't like how smooth the denoiser makes it look. It looks really fake, right? So I should have rendered without the denoiser on, in my opinion. But I went back and added some grain in to make it look a little more like, you know, a little more cinematic because film has grain on it. Okay, and then I did a hue saturation, and that was shifting that blue color to be a little more teal, I guess. And that was about it. Okay, so I didn't like how purpley the blue was looking. All right, so I assigned a similar adjustment layer in all of the camera cuts. Okay, again, so this one becomes this with that slight vignette. And I guess I should mention too that in Vantage, I actually applied a little bit of a LUTs file to it. So that shifted the colors a little bit already. Otherwise, I probably would have applied a LUTs in here. But the point is, in here, I just did some very quick adjustments. I did it for the day scene. So this is all daytime stuff. And then I did it for the night scene as well. And the cool thing about this was I could use the exact same file, but just replace the JPEG sequence underneath, and it would apply all the same things to it. So it's basically an exact copy of the other file. So these are identical, except that the JPEG sequence is either a nighttime lighting scene or a daytime lighting scene. Okay, so that's it. And then I processed both of those, and then I just took them back into my editing software and just laid them on top of each other and transitioned between one and the other as I went through the video. Real quick, just look at the adjustment layer. Okay, same adjustments as before. Slight vignette. That's it. That's everything in After Effects. So that was a long-winded way of explaining how I took a pretty nice still shot rendering from Vray and animated it fairly easily, relatively easily. Of course, explaining it took so long that in the meantime I got a haircut, changed my clothes, did all that stuff. But you get the point. Hopefully there is enough detail there so that you can feel confident in doing it yourself too. And, you know, it opens up a whole new world where our still shots It used to be like, oh, an animation, that's gonna cause some problems as far as time and budget goes. But Vantage and real-time really open up a lot of new opportunities to focus more on animation and movement and bring it to life a little bit rather than just always doing still shots, because the time is reasonable and it's not going to blow your budget out. So for me, a guy that works in Vray all the time and does still renderings very frequently, this is a very cool tool, because being able to offer the ability to go to animations quickly for a client is important. And Vantage definitely gives you that ability, and it's pretty hassle-free. And that's not the only thing I use Vantage for, of course. I also use it to preview my still shots as I'm working on them, because it's giving you real-time feedback, and you can do all sorts of things. Compose and art direct your shot in real time. The ability to do that is awesome. And the cool thing is it works on still shots or animation. Okay, so I discussed there's some things that I would like Vantage to add as features. I discussed things that I think it's really, really good at, and I'd love to know what you think about this. If you're using Vantage, let me know. Let me know if there's something you know about it that I don't. Maybe I'm using it wrong. Just give me some feedback. I'd love to know what you guys think, what your workflows look like, and if this affects your workflow or changes it at all. As always, thanks for watching. I am going to be integrating this Vantage stuff into my 3ds Max Vray courses. Those can be purchased down below at a discount price here on YouTube. I mentioned some of them earlier, but I'll have links to all that stuff. I'll have links to any other videos you may need that are relevant to this one down in the links as well. All the courses, and also, as always, check out my free resources. I've got models, I've got all sorts of industry resources about a career in Archviz, all those kind of things. Just check out the links below for anything you may want or need. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.